What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Alli Crafts. That sounded very Ryan-like. We have so much wood in this dumpster. They dismantled some of our barn doors, and I thought to myself, I don't want that going into the dump, and I also kind of want to do something fun with it. So, great idea. In my opinion, maybe not everyone's. I'm going to take the wood that they were just going to throw away from our barn's dismantled barn doors, and I'm going to turn it into Valentine's Day crafts. I'm going to show you how to make those Valentine's Day crafts with trash wood. It's a trash craft. Let's do it. For this craft, the first thing you're going to need is wood. The wood is going to be the base of the craft, and that's what we're cutting into 3 separate pieces to make the stack of books. You're going to need 3 different colors of paint. I chose paints that I had, and you can go to the store and buy any 3 colors, but I picked bright red, peony pink, and petal pink. You're going to need white paint. I'm not showing you white paint because white paint is white paint. It's just plain white paint to paint the letters with. But you could also use these colors if you want to, not buy white paint. You're also going to need stencils, and I picked stencils I found at the Dollar Tree because I wanted anyone to be able to make this craft, and I wanted to show you a couple of variations of stencils that you can use, but also the stencil that I use. So there's a few different ones, and I went with this one that you see on the books. For the stencil, you need dabbers. I also picked up a bag of these from the Dollar Tree. I wash them and reuse them, but you don't have to. You can throw them away if you just buy a bag for $1.25. These are super useful, super helpful, but if you don't want to buy these, you could always just use a piece of a sponge. So that's another option or alternative to purchasing these. But these are really great, and I'm so glad I bought them. I always saw people using them, and I finally bought some. They're amazing. A paintbrush. You definitely need a paintbrush because you have to paint all of your books. Sandpaper. I went with 60 grit because I don't want to sand as long. You have to be good at sanding and fast whenever you're sanding because you don't want to go in too deep to the wood. But because this wood was more of a hardwood, I knew that 60 grit sandpaper would work the quickest for me. And then lastly, whatever you want to tie your books together with. I bought this from the Dollar Tree, but you can also buy a pack of 3. It's not as nice of twine as this one. This is the crafting twine, and this is like in the automotive section, but this is a really great twine and a great alternative, and it's always nice to have extra twine around, but you can use either one of these twines. They're both from the Dollar Tree, and you're going to use it to tie the books together. I embellished my books with a little felt heart because I couldn't find anything cute to put here, and I thought it was kind of blah and boring without it, but you could honestly put anything here. I just had a little scrap piece of felt, so I cut it out and stuck it there, but anything there would look cute, even a tassel that you could make out of twine. But this is the craft that I made. This is what I'm going to show you how to make, and you can use most items from the Dollar Tree to make this craft and a little piece of trash. Step 1 for making this craft is you need a piece of wood. The wood I used was a 2x6, so it's about 1.5 inches by 5.5 inches actual inches in measurement, but they call them 2x6s, and that was taken down from the barn doors, pulled it out of the trash, problem solved. I'm going to reuse that wood. So you just need a piece of 2x6 wood that you can cut down. Next step is you're going to take your wood and you're going to cut it into 3 separate pieces. I cut my wood into the top one at 7.5 inches. The second book was cut at 8 inches, and then the third book was cut at 8.75 inches. The reason I chose these measurements was because I was trying to get them as close to an actual book in size, but I also didn't want them to be staggered exactly the same. But again, you can change your measurements to whatever suits your needs best, but those are the measurements that I used. Next step, you're going to sand the wood. Typically, wood it's not very smooth. You don't want to get any splinters, so you're going to want to sand everything down nice and smooth. Again, I use 60 grit sandpaper, but I would recommend if you use 60 grit first, then moving up to 100 grit sandpaper to get the books a bit more smooth, because 60 grit's going to leave your wood a bit coarse still, and you want that paint to go on a bit smoothly. This is the difference of sanded versus unsanded. And then once your books are all sanded, you are going to paint them in the 3 colors of your choice. So I painted all of them at once, and then after they were painted, I let them dry. Once they're totally dry, you are going to stencil your letters on. You can make a stencil yourself if you have the capability to, but I chose Dollar Tree stencils because I knew that most people could find these stencils at the Dollar Tree for only $1, but you can go to Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, any Walmart, any store like that to buy a stencil. But the stencils at the Dollar Tree were just the right size for the width of the books. Next, you're going to sand again. So what I did is I took my 60 grit sandpaper and I hit all of the edges. Once all of my edges were sanded nicely, I took the 100 grit and smoothed off the top if there were any like spots from the paint that I didn't like, or there were any areas that I wanted to make a bit lighter for that distressed look. I use the 100 grit for that, but the edges, I would recommend using a 60 grit so you're not sanding as long. Also, if you're sanding by hand, 60 grit's a lot easier than 100 grit. And lastly, you get to tie your books together. You can stagger them like this, or you can tie them together nice and neat and organized like this. But there's lots of options. You can display them any way you want to. You can put something on top. What's nice about this craft is that not only is it reclaimed, but it's a very strong craft. This is the type of craft you could chuck. It's like a chucking craft. You could throw it against a wall and it would be fine. It's not going to break, it's wood. So that's the best part about this craft, is that you don't have to worry about it breaking in storage, let alone keeping items out of the trash. And the most exciting part about these crafts is that they are for sale. I showed you how I made one of them with items that everyone can get for very, very cheap. But I also, in addition to these, I made 2 variations because I thought, let me get really creative and try making lots of different things, because it would be really boring to make a bunch of the same one. So I made a couple of different variations of this craft. It's going to be available for sale on our website, and we're going to have a link in the description below. So if you want one, there's only 6 of them. Please don't be upset if they sell out. Maybe they won't, maybe everyone will hate them, but they're for sale if you want a piece of the Rally Roots barn as a gift for someone or just for yourself. This is a great craft for anybody and everybody. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you potentially next week because I'm going to be making 3 more crafts with wood that came from the dumpster. Yeah, so see you next time. I'm Alli Roots, and peace.